Well, typically, community development corporations start at the bank. That's where the money is.
Right.
And banks have an obligation under the Community Reinvestment Act is to understand what's happening in their communities they serve and to fund some of those social ills to try to fix some of those. And so banks have always been a great place to start for looking for funding. Prior to that, though, is you need a checking account.
Right.
You need to have some kind of financial wherewithal, and that's where you start. If your checking account is at a bank, I would start at that bank, and I would go there and I would ask for an application. I'd say, "What do you need to give me some operational funding so I can carry out this mission?"
Yeah.
And they're going to hand you a document, and it's going to be a pretty long document that says, "Do you have these items?" And it's probably 20 to 30 things that you need to have. I mentioned some of those earlier, the mission statement, the bylaws, financial statements, etc. And those are things you need to have in place. And that is a great beginning process to ask the bank's foundation, could I get some operating money to fund my mission?
Talk a little bit more about bank foundations. Is that separate and apart from the bank? What?
Yes. So banks have the main entity, which is the operating company where you go get your loans and checking accounts. And then they have a philanthropic or a foundation arm as well, which is somewhat separate from the bank. The bank funds it, but the foundation cannot benefit the bank with that money. Typically, they give that money out in communities that they serve, where their branches are, their geographic area. They look for nonprofits, typically, not always CDCs, but nonprofits that are doing good work in the community, and they give dollars to that work.
Would you suggest a CDC or another nonprofit start with the foundations, or do you start with the bank, or what's the hierarchy here?
Yes, I would start with the banks and the foundations. And typically, if you go, you have nonprofit corporations, you have other nonprofits in the area. I would start with a large one and just make a call to them and say, "Hey, who are the funders in this area, and should I approach those, and how should I approach those?"
What about funders in like the nonprofit sector? I know Navigate has a couple programs where we help other nonprofits with funding requests. I'm thinking capital stack for my project. Where do you put those other players in the community that might have dollars to invest or give away in programs like this?
Yeah, it kind of depends. So you have project dollars and you have operational dollars. Right. Operational dollars is what keeps the lights on, what pays the salary, what pays the executive director. Those dollars are typically very hard to get. Foundations and funders like to fund projects. They want to see things happen in the community. We at Navigate understand that you have to have both.
Right.
And that if you don't have operational capacity, you can't carry out your mission. So you have to distinguish what your ask is.
Yeah.
You can't ask for $100,000 and give 75 to the executive director and 25 to the program. No one will fund that. Most funders are going to give 100 to the program, and then you're going to say as an organization, well, how do I execute on that? And that's the balance of nonprofits on a daily basis.
Yeah, sure. In the world of housing, there's other opportunities, federal and state dollars that can flow into this. How do you see those engaging with the CDC? I'm thinking like LIHTC or CDBG or other programs like that. Can CDCs leverage in that space?
Absolutely. I think now the low-income housing tax credit, LIHTC, is probably a little sophisticated for a startup CDC. But certainly the community development block grant funding, which is from HUD, which goes to the municipality or to the city, you're certainly eligible for those funds. And those community development partners in those municipalities are always looking for community development corporations that can execute the mission, and the city and the municipality will fund that with community development block grant funding.